Hello, I'm Dan Sweet. I'm Director of Public Relations and Communications for HAI, Helicopter Association International, and welcome to our HAI at Work webinar for today. There we go. We're sharing screens now. Appreciate that you're joining us today. We've done a number of military civilian workshops and webinars over the years. The Mil2Civ workshop at HAI Heli Expo has always been very, very popular. And if you are a military person who's considering leaving the military, that's a great place to go for resources. This coming year is going to be in Atlanta, the second full week of March. You can go to HAI Heli Expo for more information on that. Today's topic is specifically for maintenance people. This is the first time we've done something for the wrench turners. You guys keep the aircraft flying, and so we are happy to support you as well as the pilots. There's a lot of military or aviation careers, civilian careers available, and the group of people that we have as panelists today are here specifically to try to make this as easy and as successful as possible for you. So let's go ahead and get into who our panelists are. I have done this alphabetically, so they will not appear generally in this order on screen. Mike Broderick is the owner of RotorDoc. Mike is also a member of the HAI, the lead of the HAI Working Group for Maintenance and Technology. Heidi McBride is John Griswold is a retired Army Command Sergeant Major and an A&P mechanic, and is currently working as an FAA safety inspector. Heidi McBride, there we go. She's our moderator today. She's an AW139 IFR second in command pilot for Bristow. James Simmons is Senior Manager of Aviation Quality for Ulista Aviation. Cliff Venata is the U.S. Air Force veteran and the owner of Mr. V's Testing Airframe Inspection and Repair. If this is the first time you've joined us, our webinars are interactive. We want your questions, especially on something like this where it will be affecting your career potentially. So make sure that you have the opportunity to ask questions. The best way to do that is to use the question module within Zoom. It's going to be either at the bottom of your computer screen or the side, or it might be in a drop-down menu if you're on your phone. We will pay attention to the chats. We may actually use the chat feature to share information. But if you want your question answered, please ask using the question module. Now, we're going to do our best to get all the information and all the questions answered. If we don't have time, we will actually also do our best to respond to the questions individually. We have your email captured with the registration, and so we're going to make sure that we try to get back to you. We will also try to get the information posted to an HAI website called Mil2Civ. And so one way or another, the information will be provided. This webinar is being recorded as well. And so we want you to share this information. We know that right now it's a very difficult time for maintenance people to take time away from their work and watch this. So we expect a lot of people will be able to watch this after hours or on their leisure time, convenience. Please share this with anybody that you know who is getting ready to leave the military anytime soon. With that, I would like to introduce Heidi McBride. She is a former Coast Guard pilot, and she's going to be the moderator for today's program. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate that. And thank you everyone who's joining us, and especially our guest speakers. And just to clarify, I was a prior Coast Guard aircraft mechanic and crew chief on Jayhawks, and then utilized my GI Bill to go to flight school and got my A&P and worked as an airframe and power plant mechanic, avionics technician while attending flight school. I'm very excited to be doing the specific maintenance webinar today because maintenance is certainly one of my biggest passions, as I started out as a mechanic first and then pursued a pilot career in continuation of that. Today, our major focus is to make sure that all of our military mechanics who are wanting to make that transition into the civilian sector have the proper tools, the proper information to make a successful transition, to get their full airframe and power plant license, and to get a job in the civilian sector. So we're going to be talking about how to get your 8610, how to show properly for an interview, you in order to get that 8610 that authorizes you to get to take the tests that's required to get your airframe and power plant, how to prepare for those written tests, how to prepare for your oral and practical test, what to do once you have that airframe and power plant license, what to expect, the difference between a military maintenance career in comparison of civilian maintenance career, and really how to prepare yourself as a professional, how to set up your resume, and how to have a successful interview as an A&P mechanic for a job in the civilian sector, and how to be successful and grow that career in the civilian sector. So that's our job. We want to make sure you make a successful transition, and we're here to answer those questions and to explain that process effectively for you. Starting out, I want to bring on John Griswold. He's an FAA aviation inspector, and he is highly educated and experienced to provide all the information that you need in order to prepare for your initial interview to get certified to take an airframe and power plant test. So John, go ahead if you could join us.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate it. And yes, I'm John Griswold, 27 years active duty military as a 15 Tango, 15 Zulu, that's a Black Hawk repairman. I've got my associate's degree in aviation maintenance technologies and a bachelor's in aeronautics from Embry-Riddle. I hold my maintenance technician certificate with both airframe and power plant, my commercial pilot certificate, flight instructor certificate, and remote pilot certificate. And I currently work in the Nashville FSDO as an aviation safety technician. It's been a rewarding career in the military, and it was a great transition moving out of the military, and the A&P definitely helped out in that transition. So what I'm going to talk about today is what is an 8610 or the FAA form 8610? The expectations and some of the recent changes that came about for the interview process when you're going to try to get your 8610-2, or commonly referred to as the tickets. Some discussion about the flight standards district offices selections. There's a myth that you have to go to your flight standards district office or the one closest to you, which is not true, and we'll get into that. And then what happens if you don't qualify for the tickets? It's not the end of the world, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So first off, what is the 8610-2? It's authorization to take the written, oral, and practical exams for your aviation maintenance technician certificate. The 8610 it does not expire until you take your first exam, and then you have 24 months after that exam to get everything done. So myself, I got my 8610s very early in my career. However, I went another 15, 18 years before I decided to go in and take my exams, written exams, and the oral and practical exam to earn my certificates. So getting past that first hurdle is great, but do not rush into failure. And I'm sure Cliff will talk a little bit more on that as well. And the things, how do you get to the 8610? There's actually 3 ways. One, most obvious, is you graduate from a Part 147 AMT course. Another way is kind of like the unicorn that we see very, very few of these, but it's completion certificate from the Joint Service Aviation Maintenance Technician Certification Council, or the military likes their acronyms, the JSAMTCC. That serves as the military's version of a 147 AMT course. It says that you've met all the requirements in accordance with Part 147. And the last way, and the most popular way for the military, is presenting evidence of experience. And that's 18 months of airframe or power plant experience if you're going for one or the other certificate, or 30 months combined for airframe and power plant. So it's big to know, especially if you go into the interview, and what we see a lot of is you get in there and you start going through your interview, and you discover that you don't really have a lot of power plant experience when it comes to what they're looking for. Removing a turbine engine and reinstalling a turbine engine does not really constitute as qualifying power plant experience. you really have to get into the engines, different types of engines, reciprocating turbine, those type of things, and start building on that experience to get in there. So even though the table says that, say, for instance, a 15 Tango is qualified for both airframe and power plant, you do not meet the experience to get the power plant one. So if you take I'll just take for my airframe now, and we'll do the power plant later after I get some experience, then you have to understand that there's a little added to that. You're gonna have to wait another 18 months, build your experience of knowing at least 50% of the subject areas, and moving into coming back, taking the interview. And it's a little more of a hassle rather than just holding off and getting some experience in reciprocating engines or different components of the engines and those type of things. So it's important to understand what that 30 month combination of airframe and power plant really means and what your experience level is. And we'll get into the ACS 1 as a recent change. As I said, you must provide, if you're going in based off experience, you must provide evidence of experience of at least 50% of the skills elements in the ACS 1, which is your aviation mechanic, general airframe and power plant airman certification standards. It used to be part 147, appendix B, C, and D, be able to discuss teaching levels 1, 2, and 3 subject of those subject areas. Now with the ACS, it's a lot less subjective. There are under the skills elements, they're tasks that you have performed or need to perform. There's a total of 519 tasks for general airframe and power plant. And it sounds very intimidating, but a lot of those tasks are, reading schematics, performing weight and balance, things that military maintenance individuals, at least myself, did quite often. So being able to go through there, if you reach that magic 260 mark, which is 50%, then you can thank yourself as qualified. The inspector that you talk to will be asking you questions on that. And then if you can talk about those intelligently and prove to him that you've had those experiences, then there's not going to be a problem. If you don't get to that 260 mark of all those skill elements, then you really have to ask yourself the hard question of, am I ready? And it's okay if you're not, because the PMIs are not going to accept MOS as just carte blanche as a qualification to experiences. As a 27 years of my career, I've met a lot of 15 uniforms, 15 Tangos, or Black Hawk mechanics, Chinook mechanics, avionics mechanics that were the driver for the colonel or worked in the tool crib for 6, 8, 10 years. They do not have the experience, and the inspectors know that. The inspectors know those individuals exist, so they're not going to take just your MOS, AFCS, or NECs as a evidence alone. Ways that you can provide that evidence of experience is training records. If you have training records, OJT records through your service, if you kept a maintenance logbook, if you have aircraft logbooks, much like the Army has ACN, where you can print out tasks that you've completed before, or recommendation letters that are very specific as to, what type of maintenance you did, not just worked on the UH-1 or UH-60 or CH-47 helicopter, but what did you work on those aircraft? Be specific with the systems, engines, landing gear, hydraulics, electrics or electronics, batteries. There's a long list, and as you get into the ACS 1, you'll see what I'm talking about. So after you do that, and you're ready to take your ready to do the interview for the A610, understand that the FSDO selection can be critical. All right, there's a lot of FSDOs out there, but there's no requirement that you must take or use the nearest one to you. Being in Nashville, we get a lot of people from Minnesota, New Jersey, Maine. Had people from Colorado even that come over, and they utilize our Part 147 gap courses or test prep courses, as they're commonly referred to, from either Baker's or NCI. So they utilize the FSDO there or here in Nashville. And we do work with a lot of military since we have the 101st Airborne Division right in our backyard. So it's one of the largest Army aviation units in the US. So it helps to have a FSDO that understands the military's maintenance programs and what actual MOSs do, because those numbers do not mean the same thing to everybody. And saying you're an F-15 mechanic doesn't translate to the same thing from one person to another. So finding that FSDO in the inspector that knows a little bit about your background and your MOS helps out quite a bit. One thing you want to try to avoid is FSDO hunting, though. So if you go to go to an interview for your 8610s and you and the PMI or the inspector says, no, sorry, but you're just not qualified, and then you jump over to a next FSDO a couple weeks later, they're going to know. The FSDOs talk. If you go in for an interview, you're going to have your information put in the system, and prior to the interview, they're going to look up in the system and see if your name and birth date are associated in there, so they can see if you're just trying to shop around. Find a PMI and work with that PMI. If they say, I'm sorry, you're not qualified, have that dialogue with them. It's okay. It costs you $0 for the inspector to say you're not quite ready. However, it's going to cost you roughly $1,000 for the designated maintenance examiner to tell you the same thing. So it's not the end of the world to not be ready at that point in the interview. Talk to the inspector and find out what more, or what do I need to work on? Do you have ideas where I can go? There's possibilities of going to repair stations after you get out the military. That doesn't require an AMP. You work under the Part 145 repair stations certificate. They can, your 18 months still counts. Your 18 months of aviation experience still counts that you did in the military. So you walk in the door and you're able to get your repairman certificate and build that experience that way, and then come back for your 8610s for the AMP certificate. Local airports, there's always airplane owners that are out there that would be glad to have a helping hand that gives you experience on, doing oil changes on reciprocating engines. There's all sorts of good maintenance good maintenance opportunities out there at your local airports. If you have a flight school, find out who provides their maintenance, and you can actually get a good idea of the difference between 100-hour inspection in the military and 100-hour inspection on an actually certificated aircraft are very, very different. Those flight schools, the maintainers that work those flight school aircraft do them all the time, and that will provide you experience rapidly because you deal with all the systems: engine, flight controls, avionics, vacuum systems, everything. You're going to get your hands on it, so it helps out quite a bit. I think I mentioned, if you do qualify for one rating as you go in there, it's okay to say, yeah, I'll just take my airframe for now and then come back for my power plant later. But understand that you're going to have to say you were at 255 of those skill elements in the ACS-1 and for airframe and power plant, but you met the requirements for your airframe, not quite power plant. You could use all of that the 49% towards your power plant if you just held off for 6 months and went out and got some experience, and instead of just accepting the airframe right away and going to get the job. So there's opportunities that are out there, and they do pay. Myself, whenever I first transitioned out of the military, I went to a flight school, and that's exactly what I did. Is I just got tons of experience, turning wrenches on small GA aircraft and Sikorsky 300 or S300 Schweitzer aircraft, which is great experience learning what reciprocating engines look like on a helicopter rather than turbine aircraft or turbine engines. Had all the turbine engine experience I needed, I thought, but there's a lot more to do with it. So other than that, pending your questions towards the end, Heidi, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. And I also just want to comment, the people that are asking questions, thank you. Please continue to do so. We are going to try to answer all of those questions towards the end, and some of our panelists may be answering those on the side, but we'll also like to answer those questions towards the end, because I bet if you have that question, there's a number of people that also have a similar question. Thank you, Dan, very much. Just to kind of recap on what Dan said, there has been changes in the FAA that allow you to get your 8610. So make sure you research that. Please reach out to him directly, and you have questions about obtaining that 8610. Please feel free to ask those questions in the comment section, and we would like to fill that in. So moving on, I'd like to introduce Cliff Veneta. He is the owner of MVT Air, and he has got a fantastic background, and I'm eager to introduce him to you all. Cliff was running a course at a college for people to get their AMT licenses, their airframe and power plant licenses. And he's also a DME, a designated maintenance examiner, and he's going to discuss with you how to prepare for that test with a designated maintenance examiner. So Cliff, if you go ahead and come on board.
Heidi, thank you. I am Cliff Veneta. My past experience, 29 years civil service and reserve. Some of that was active, a lot of it. After that, I had gotten my AMP while I was in the service and towards the end. And I took it from there and became a team lead for Lockheed Martin, working on 130s. All kind of different 130s for different countries and that kind of thing. And then I took a job with Sierra Nevada Corp as a site lead and shift lead, RIIA, all that stuff. But anyway, and then I moved on from there, became director of maintenance for a helicopter company, Ansel and Brown Aviation. And then I was director of maintenance. No, excuse me, I was director and coordinator for a school. I ran a school for 4.5 years, George Stone in Pensacola, George Stone Technical College. And then I was director of maintenance again at Sky Warrior Aviation, which is a flight school for the Navy. And then I started my own business and do DME stuff mainly, and teaching classes for different companies like Leonardo's and Vertex and ST Engineering and Amentum, which used to be Dynacorp. But anyway, I teach a lot of classes at a lot of different facilities and different places. So I have a lot to offer as far as your questions in that. We've come up with some questions that we think, you know, could be good, could be interesting for you guys. One of them, how can applicants effectively prepare for a test with a DME? Well, first of all, you got to get through the writtens first. So let's talk about the writtens first. So it doesn't matter whether you go to the joint services course, you take that, but you still have to take your written test. So, and again, like James did a great description of the 8610 and what you need to do and the things you need to happen with that. But 8610-2 is the other way that you can get it, or like he said, through a 147 school. But like he said, most military people do the 8610-2. A DME can help you with that because they know who to contact in your local FSDO. Now, look, he is correct. You can go anywhere you want to go to get your 8610-2 certified, you know, and it is that interview process. But most of the time, people that go for these interviews, they are prepared. They know They got to bring their training records, any kind of documentation, any kind of letters from their commander, their chiefs, whoever's in charge. You got to bring any kind of information like that that you would have or that you can pull down, inspections you've done, heavy maintenance. I love to see that on 8610-2s, the heavy maintenance part. And because look, the FAA is not going to sign off on your paperwork unless you can prove that you've done it, because they know that there are those folks out there like James had talked about that, you know, that worked in a tool room that did this or that. So look, you have to have your maintenance part of it verifiable, very much so verifiable. So, but once they sign off on your 8610-2, then we're talking about the written test. Now let's talk about how we can get prepared for the written test. One of the programs that I love is prepware.com. I love that program right there because as a DME, you can select me as your instructor, and I've already got tests built into it and that kind of thing to help you out. So, and other DMEs do too. We all use that program. We can help you along, and especially with military guys. With military guys, I teach courses. It's according to how much you need. Sometimes I can get everything you need in a couple days. Sometimes it'll take 2 weeks, you know, and I can get you, you know, what you need, you know, by teaching you through a class of stuff. Like James was saying, you know, I did the same thing. I worked at a Cessna dealership, you know, doing whatever they wanted me to do to learn reciprocating engines because I didn't know it. I mean, I've been on turbines, I've been on jets, I've been on anything you can think of, you know, as far as the military, but never recip engines. So it was like, hey, I had to take leave and go figure out, you know, how to work on these recip engines. So that's how I got it. But look, everybody that gets their A&P gives up something. And the main thing for military people is time. They have to give up their time to, number one, study for these written tests, because there's not a course to get you through these written tests. There's ways I can teach you how to get through it, or a DME can teach you how to get through it, you know, these written tests and known ways, you know, that we can help you succeed in that area. But the main thing that we have to remember, especially as military folks, being as long as I was in, we have to remember that we have to think like the FAA. We do. When we're taking these tests and all that, we have to think like they think, not how we were indoctrinated and trained in the military. It's a different ball of wax. So we have to learn their laws and their rules and that kind of thing, like FAR 43, like 65, FAR 65. I teach that all the time, like FAR 43 is how you do things, how we do a 100-hour inspection. 65, who can do what? You know, how would you know what to do being a military person coming through? So those FARs are very important to us to even know that. Also helps you with your testing. But long story short, I would concentrate on one course at a time. So do your generals first. Start on that first. Only look at that material. Study. And like I said, everybody takes time to do it. For instance, I took a week to do my generals, right? Study, 8 to 12 hours a day. And then on that 5th day, I took the test. Did the same thing with the airframe, same thing with power plant, and passed all my stuff. But then I had to get, you know, I had to take some classes from a DME to figure out, you know, what the rest of the story was. So, but anyway, that's kind of how you getting through the written part. Preparatory classes, look, I strongly suggest them. If you can get to a DME in your local area, I'm telling you, you need to take a class from them. They will help you along that journey, because I don't know another way a military person could actually get it. You know, so your local DMEs, I'm more than willing to help anybody, but if you wanted to go to your local DME, please do that. And just, there's not all of them in your FSDO do it, your flight standards office, not all of them do it, but I know that there's probably 1 or 2 in your area that do. So anyway, I strongly suggest that. Another question, how can applicants effectively prepare for their written tests, which we kind of went over, but the oral and practical test, oral and practical test. There is a book, an oral and practical test guide. The Dale Crane version is who I suggest, Dale Crane, Oral and Practical Test Guide. That is the book that I like people to use because it's one answer for the question. And there's always, you know, like any other FAA thing, there's always a key word and a key thing in the answer, you know, that you need to put that to and be able to explain it, you know. So, and the books you need to go through, the 8083, the -30, the -31, and the 32 are the base of what all these questions are written off of. So those are things that you can pull down FAA.gov. FAA.gov, you can pull those books down. That's the 8083, -30, 31, and 32 for power plant. Anyway, how long does a full A&P oral and practical examination take? Look, it depends on the applicant and how much they know. Okay, but I will tell you typically that if you're just doing airframe, so that means general and airframe, because general has to be done before we go into airframe or power plant. And so if I do general and airframe, it's at the minimum I can do one in is like 8 hours. So you're looking, that's an average of 8 hours. Sure, some people finish a little quicker than that. Some people it takes a little longer, but the deal is it's all according to your oral part. So if you take longer on your oral part, most of the guys, especially military guys, they know the practical part. They just need to be gone through the task and, you know, provide them with a manual, provide, you know, that kind of thing. And typically they can get through it. So, you know, but it's still a long test. It's not something that, you know, and then if you come back, let's say you split your airframe, I mean, your power plant, and do that along with, you know, add that on at a later date, you're looking at 4 hours, minimum of 4 hours. So you're looking at 12 hours total. That's kind of a minimum. Okay. It could be 6. It's according, because when the FAA, when we pull our information down, we don't get to pick what we want. The FAA provides that information for us, the test questions, the oral questions that we have to ask, and the practicals. So I'm given 7 questions per section. And if it's just general and airframe, it's 29 sections. So you can kind of figure that out. But I can pick, you know, which 4 questions I ask out of the 7, but I have to ask those 7 questions. So that's kind of how that goes. And then after I get done with the oral, then I go right into my practicals, because some DMEs, if you don't make it through the oral, they don't even go to their practicals. But it's all up to a DME, what he wants to do, he or she wants to do, you know, as far as moving you along. I mean, I've had people, you know, fail the general portion, but pass the airframe and power plant oral. And then I go over to the practicals and they pass all the practicals. So that means if you miss one section, if you mess up on one section, you have to come back and test for that one section in 30 days. Now, there are caveats to that. You can get, you know, training from another A&P and that kind of thing and do it early. It's not something I suggest, though. If you mess up on a section, take that time, like James was talking about, take that time and you know, really go over the information and learn it better than what you knew it. Let's see, that's kind of about that, how an A&P oral and practical takes. There's all kind of VA approved maintenance transition courses. I mean, look, there's 3 schools that I recommend, Baker's being the first one in Lebanon, Tennessee. You know, they do a great service for if you wanted to take a 2-week class. The only thing about going to that school is if you don't pass and they just guarantee that you'll pass, you may go up there 3 or 4 times and are retaking exams, that kind of thing. That's why I tell people, military people, look, take classes from a DME and you know, you will thank goodness, you'll thank God for you actually did that, because, you know, they can teach you some things that you don't know. And that's what I do. I concentrate on stuff you don't know. I don't concentrate on the stuff that you do already know. That's why the interview process is such a good thing. Even with DMEs, we kind of go through the same thing. We're like, hey, where are you coming from? What do you know, what do you need from us? So I like to help military people out that way. So self-study materials. What materials can you use? Okay. Again, I like ASA Prepware. There's also Jepson. Okay. But the FAA switches the questions, how they're worded. Okay. They're the same questions, but asked in a little bit different way, right? The words are twisted around. So Jepson and ASA, basically the same books. Okay. But just the wording is different. So the FAA changes the wording up, I don't know, quarterly, something like that, you know, of how they're asking the question. So again, I go back to remember the main key word in the actual question and the key word in the answer that we're looking for, with the caveat that you probably going to have to explain it if there's some kind of, you know, question in my mind that you don't know what you're talking about. So, but anyway, those ASA books, there's a general written guide, and there's a airframe written guide, and also a power plant written guide. You can get them from Amazon.com. They're less than $20 per book. Okay, and then the 8083-30, 31, and 32 is pulled down right from the FAA website. Just go into the search bar and type them numbers in, and that's actually the books that they pull all those questions at. What's good about that is you can take, if you go into Prepware and save your test, you can print them down, and whatever information is at the bottom of an answer, whether you got it right or wrong. If you get it wrong, it'll give you more information. It'll tell you what section to go to in the book. Therefore, you want to download those, you know, manuals so that you go right to that section and you're not reading the whole chapter. So it saves you time as a military person. It saves you time because you're already a mechanic. So anyway, super important. You can get that from Amazon.com, or there's another place that I like to go to. It's called Wing Arrow, and you can get these same books. And if you can, buy a bundle. Wing Arrow sells bundles where you can get a Prepware 2-year subscription to the Prepware. And, you know, with buying it by a bundle, I think it's a little bit more than that, but say in the mid-20s, something like that. But anyway, 2 sources that you can get those books from, but that's definitely what I would do. All right, civilian FAA maintenance rules and parts. I talked a little bit about that, you know, for you guys. I don't want to get too far into detail about it, but 43 is one of the main ones that you need to know, and part 65. Part 65. It's who can do what on an airplane and how. Part 43, you know, it tells you all kind of things. The 100-hour inspection, what's a major or a minor repair, that kind of thing. Okay, so those are 2 very important ones that you guys need to know. All right, where do most applicants struggle? All right, this is always a big deal with me. First of all, structural repair, electronics, avionics, comm nav, and weight and balance. Weight and balance, okay? For sure, that weight and balance always kills everybody. So if you don't know it, make sure that, you know, somebody goes over it with you, or you get the manual. All right. Practical areas that are troubleshooters, again, structural repair and troubleshooting. Structural repair, troubleshooting, and again, electronics would be some, comm nav some. So you want to really look at those things. How much does it cost to take FAA written tests and oral and practical examinations with a DME? Important question. Okay. Right now the tests are running $175 a piece written. Okay. If you're a military person though, and you have a PSI testing facility at your base, you can do it for free. So if you can get in there and take those tests, I highly recommend that. It'll save you some money. Again, the VA will reimburse you for some of this stuff. And if you retired, you know, and got out, obviously they're going to reimburse that kind of thing also. So let's talk about DME, how much it costs for DMEs. Now, look, this is something that's very different, you know, between whatever area that you're in. But basically, our FSDO runs anywhere from $1,500 down to $750. $750 is the cheapest. That's for a full A&P, airframe power plant. You know, of course, that's general included. So, but that's $750 for a full one. Or if you just do a half, let's say you do airframe, it's $400, airframe in general, and then $350 to add your power plant on later. So there's some folks, you know, that have been doing it a long time, but anyway, they tend to charge a lot more. But you know, even you know, it's expensive. It's not cheap. It's not like you're getting a mechanic certificate, you know, and it is a certificate. It's not a license. It's a certification from the FAA. So I know we all talk about that, about, hey, you got your A&P license or all that, but look, it's a certification. So, and some PMI inspectors get a little testy about that when you talk about that it's a license, but it's not. It's a certification. All right. How can military mechanics begin setting themselves up for success prior to getting out? Look, take the Joint Services certification if you can. If not, then at least get your 8610 signed so that you know, you can start getting your written tests done. Because so maybe during your transition, you still have access to the base and the testing center, and you can get it for free. Anyway, VA approved schools, we kind of talked about that. Baker School of Aeronautics in Lebanon, Tennessee, Embry-Riddle, and AIM, Aircraft Institute of Maintenance. I like those three. Obviously, there's more than that, but for sake of time, those are probably at the top of my head, the best three. If you already have the required maintenance experience, what are some good short preparatory schools that you can attend? Again, I would look at the Bakers or go with a school that a DME provides, you know, because that's going to get you the training that you need and not go over a bunch of stuff that you don't need. So, and that's one thing that I hate about when you go to these schools. They got a set course that they, you know, go over stuff that's not really pertinent to you. So, but like if, you know, we're talking, you know, I've worked on several helicopters, but look, if we're just talking about a helicopter guy, he's going to need, you know, aircraft experience, you know, because aircraft work different than helicopters. But on the other hand, an airplane guy is going to have some helicopter experience. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Anyway, I think that about covers it for me. So if there's any questions, back to you, Heidi.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really, really useful information. So we've gone through with John. He has told us about how to prepare for your interview with the PMI in order to get that initial 8610 that allows you to take your 3 written tests, your airframe, your power plant, and your general tests, and then the oral and practical. I went to Baker School with my background in the Coast Guard working on Jayhawks, and I did go to Baker's and got my written test done and my oral and practical. It cost me, just like Cliff said, $175 per written test, and my oral and practical test by itself cost $1,500 back in 2016. Those prices may have gone up, and again, it's going to be specific to your area. So moving on to James Simmons, he is the Maintenance Aviation Quality Manager at ULISTA. I'm going to bring him on board. He can introduce himself, tell you about his background, and understand the difference between military maintenance and the civilian sector and how to prepare yourself now for a totally different environment. So James.
Hi, thanks, Heidi. Hi, my name is James Simmons, and I'm a senior quality manager here at ULISTA in Huntsville, Alabama. So my current role where I currently work, we're primarily a DoD contract maintenance facility, and so. But my experience, I had started out same thing as John and the Black Hawk family as a 15 Tango. Got out, completed my school with Embry-Riddle, a master's degree recently, and got my AMP, my IA, my FCC. So put all the feathers in the hat that I could. And so what we're going to get into a little bit is kind of the differences in everybody that I know there's people out there. Well, I can go be a contractor and I don't have to have an AMP, and or I can go into the civilian world and in the beginning, yes, start out with a repair station under a repairman certificate and all those different avenues. So it's like if you got your AMP and now what, or you just got to transition and get out, and what do you want to do and where do you want to go? So I'm going to steal the little quote that I learned a long time ago from Stacy Sheard, which is right. There's 27 sectors in the helicopter industry, right? And I always loved that since the first time I heard it, because I never actually thought about it until I was sitting in a Mil2Civ workshop. So out of these 27 sectors, and it is really big, but yet small. It's a small family community, just like aviation and the military. I've worked for 135 EMS operators. I've worked oil and gas offshore with the operators down in Louisiana. And then I've gone back and forth several times between contracting and civil. And it's all depending on, the economic market and what goes on in the different swings. But the biggest part is the AMP gives you that freedom to be able to do that, right? So you've got your military experience, but you're not restricted, right? The AMP gets you in the door to a lot more options. It holds that door open for you. So the difference primarily is, and going back to the contract side of it, aircraft that are being introduced to the military are now, civilian derivatives. So civilian derivatives. So if you start out like if you look at the LUH, which is a for the Army, it's their light utility helicopter. It's a BK-117C2. It is a full commercial aircraft that the Army says, you know what, we want to operate this thing. Well, they brought over rules and regulations with them that they wanted to operate with, and the agreements that they established said, you know what, we're going to make everybody that works on this thing have to have an AMP. And so even the green suiters, even the ones, National Guard units that operate it and everything else, they've got to get their AMP. But it's a bonus as far as, they gain the experience on a civilian aircraft. They've got their AMPs knocked out. But yet, as the time continues on, more aircraft that come in the military may have that requirement, or there's different contracts that have the requirements established with them because Air Force likes to see it. They actually put it into the overarching contracts that they establish with the contractors. It may be a 145 repair station, it may be AMP requirements. There's different things. So I can go work for the military as a contractor and just have it made. It's even that's getting a little bit more restrictive as time goes on and trying to figure out exactly what to do. So within the industry of these 27 sectors, and we'll stick to the civil, you have the like I said, oil, gas, EMS. You have utility, which is right. That's your firefighting. That's your more restricted category aircraft. When you get like the civilian Black Hawks that everybody's becoming a little bit more familiar with, and then you have corporate is another aspect. You have charter, which is just your 135 charter operations. You have tour, which is where you go down into, say, the Grand Canyon, the different operators down there. There are helicopter operators, all over the U.S. And at the same time, it restricts the ability to, you have to be where the work is. And that's one of the other things that comes up during the transition, right? There's not going to be a helicopter operator that just happens to be where you live. If you are, hey, you're lucky. If not, you're going to have to make a decision of whether or not you want to do it. So within these operators, you break down into the different categories of the aircraft, right? And you get into basically same as the military. You have your heavies, you have your lights, you have mediums, and all these different categories of aircraft, and the breakdown and structures of the maintenance teams that go with it. So your light helicopters, it may be one mechanic, it may be a single base mechanic that takes care of an aircraft that works by themselves. And that is where they can exercise under that certificate with their A&P, is to sign off basically all the inspection requirements that an aircraft needs. When you get into the bigger aircraft and the different heavier categories, you're going to get into what the civilian world, basically your QC, you get into the R2, which is your required inspection items. And so, you have to have somebody to be able to sign off on the airworthiness in the R2 completion of the aircraft. So it has an inspector involved with it. So there's different levels of maintenance that come along through the years. I know, so depending on how you like to approach maintenance or how you like to work, if you're a team player and you know that you work well with a heavy maintenance team and doing different things in the 145 repair station, or heavier, bigger aircraft, that might be an advantage for you. If you're kind of like a little more of the solo artist and you just, give me a helicopter and a hangar and leave me alone and I want the whole world to go away and I can take care of this, there's different work and kind of where you fit into the operations of organizations. So knowing that's out there. Your customers will always be there. Your primary customer being, the pilot and then the passengers and everybody else that's involved with the operation. And then want to get into, the different approaches of like the helicopter and the airline maintenance, right? So helicopter maintenance is a lot more smaller organizations. It could be local moms and pops that have a single Robinson R-22 helicopter, or when you get into the offshore market and it's a big array of hundreds of employees. But the maintenance teams are generally, on the smaller side. Over in the airlines, they're massive hangars, massive facilities. Maintenance teams work all night. It's almost a guarantee because that's majority of the maintenance. If you're going to work anywhere, it's going to be happening at night, especially in certificate type operations, because of the fact that the aircraft are flying during the day. So that's not the prime maintenance hours. And that's kind of how the world exists with that. There is a growing need for the mechanics. There's right now, the industry is short. It is absolutely was devastated prior to COVID. Coming out of COVID, it's been more devastated. It's upwards of 40,000 technicians short just within the US. And so it's detrimental for, if you have the experience and you have the knowledge, to be able to go and pursue and take advantage of the skills and the knowledge that you've been given based on your experience of service. The employers are out there. If you don't currently have an A&P, it doesn't mean don't talk to the employers, because there may be opportunities. There's a lot of employers who are establishing ways to help you achieve the A&P testing. You have apprentice programs that you can start out with, and they will actually, go and work with you to gain your A&P certificates at the end of the amount of time required, or however, where you would fit into that apprentice program based on your experience. So employers are looking at different options as well that exist out there. One of the questions that was brought up earlier that I saw on the Q&A was I have 20 to 30 years experience in the military, just got my A&P at the end, and that people have a hard time getting hired because they don't have, quote unquote, the civilian experience. The way that I look at this, and it's kind of easier to understand, if you had, you had 20 years, let's say, experience in the Marine Corps, and you woke up tomorrow and you said, I'm going to go in the Air Force. And so, completely different branch, completely different rules, completely different setup and the way that they operate. So it's still part of the Department of Defense, but at the same time, that rank is not necessarily, going to transition directly over into the same spot. You're not going to carry that with you, right? The people that have been in the Marine Corps or in the Air Force doing it 20 years, they have more of how we do our operations. And in the civilian sector, it's kind of that equivalent. You may have had the same duties, responsibilities, and everything that you conducted in the military, but under how the certificate of operations or how that operator or how that facility does it, that is the point of experience that has to be caught up. right? And so, and I'll tell you firsthand as a person manager that walks into a certificate of operations, feeding people via fire hose to learn how the civilian world operates is not it's not a risk, mitigated approach. They like you to, it's just no different than your military training. It was a crawl, walk, run effort.
Right.
And so if they want to bring you in the same way. So coming in and saying that I have 20-year experiences in the military, I should be a maintenance manager right off the bat. Each operation is different. Each employer is different. They're going to approach that differently. And just like in the Mil2Civ that we introduced to that is, you're not the first veteran to walk in the door. There's been ones before you. And how those people performed or what they did is kind of already laid out that groundwork. So, they may approach you differently in what they want to do and where they want to place you. And that might just not be cohesive to what your expectations were. But it's finding that middle ground and understanding, how this works. So it's each one is to be handled differently. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The knowledge that you gain in the military, that is your stepping stone. You still have to grow as a mechanic in the civilian world, because when we get into all of the rules, all the regulations, the certificates of operations, and the different environment based on, whether or not it's in the EMS world, and how does that work? How are those contracts laid out? Or when you're, if you're in the oil and gas industry, what are those requirements like? What does it look like to have to deal with the way that they operate the aircraft, or who the customers are, and how detrimental is each flight, and what does it mean? So those are all part of gaining an introduction into the industry and figuring out how you're best going to be suited to fit within it. So it goes all the way from location to the personal experience that you have. There's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of room for growth. Like I said, the industry is right now at such a shortage that it's not looking good, but it's maintaining. So and I don't know if Heidi, you want to come back, because I think we're ready to go on.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much, James. That's really, really useful information. And you make an excellent point. The opportunities are there. The certifications, having an airframe and power plant certification is going to open up more doors for you. And because of the shortage, a lot of employers are creating more incentive programs for bringing people in for training and helping them get the experience required for that airframe and power plant license. Another great way to find a job is to come to Heli Expo. There are thousands of helicopter companies being represented at Heli Expo every year, and there's a career fair, and they are always looking for mechanics. And you're welcome to come to our free Mil2Civ workshop that is on Monday, on March 6th in Atlanta, the day before the Heli Expo floor opens, and we're going to go through how to make successful transitions. And there will be people on the floor recruiting mechanics, because we really do need mechanics. So thank you again, James. I really appreciate it. Next, I'm going to bring on Mike Broderick. Mike Broderick is the owner of Rotor Doctor LLC company, and he's also the recipient of the very prestigious Charles Taylor Maintenance Award. The Charles Taylor Maintenance Award is hands down the biggest, most prestigious maintenance award you can get in the civilian sector. So we're not only honored to have Mike Broderick with us today to explain his experience and guide and mentor you, but also very much to congratulate him. So Mike, if you go ahead and come up with your video and your speaker.
Mute my audio. Okay, all I had to do is learn how to do it. Heidi, flattery will get you whatever you want. I appreciate all the compliments. Yes, I did. I've been in helicopters actually for 50 years. I had my A&P license, got it in 1972. And just this year in September was awarded the Charles E. Taylor Award. It's very prestigious, and I am very honored to have gotten it. That makes me 3 days older than Dirt, probably the oldest guy in this group. That's so I'm glad they let me speak last. I was taking naps during that time. So let's talk about as an employer. First off, let me give you a little of my background. I was 6 years in the Navy. What they did to me in the Navy was make me a weatherman. Even though I wanted to become a mechanic, I ended up getting my A&P license after leaving the Navy, went through a 2-year course at a junior college, got the A&P license as well as an AA degree, then continued on and got a Bachelor of Science degree in aviation administration to kind of get myself ready for the business. Worked for, my first job was for an engine overhaul, turbine engine overhaul company, and became a technical representative, working with the Rolls-Royce engine, the small little Rolls-Royce engine, the 250, working in the field, mainly up in Alaska to start off with, and then went from there. One job led to another, and then ran into some people. We all pooled our money, and we opened up a company that serviced the Rolls-Royce engine, the Safran engine, as well as the MD and the Bell helicopters, a 145 repair station. At one point, we had just about 50 people working for us. And during that time, I was always looking for military people, mainly because of the discipline that you bring to the business. If you didn't have your A&P, I was wanting to help you get it. Now, one thing you're going to notice about the helicopter industry is it's a group of small businesses. Mainly, if you lump it all together, take it by the operator, there's about maybe 3.2 helicopters per business owner, even including the PHIs and the air methods and everything else. So it's a group of small businesses. So you are dealing with a small business. If you have to want to work in the helicopter industry, it takes a certain passion, and it takes a certain devotion to wanting to be challenged every day. For you people out there that have worked in the helicopter, you'll understand that it changes every day. A helicopter will constantly challenge your mechanical ability. It'll take you down a lot of roads while you're troubleshooting things. And I find that to me, it was exciting. It still is, to come across a problem that maybe didn't exist before and chase it down. So you've got to want to do it. But some of the things that I would also recommend is if you're going to go out and apply for a job, whether it's fixed wing or rotorcraft, learn about the company that you're applying with. Go up on the web, find out about them, find out what they do, find out how long they've been in business and what their main credentials are, so that you will know a little bit about them. That tells the employer that you're interested. Next, dress for success. Don't shorten the gut. You know, some of the people make fun of the guys that show up in a suit and tie, or ladies that might show up dressed up. Dress up. Bring all of your experience, not so much your what you want is your military maintenance experience. What qualifies you when you're talking to me as an employer? What qualifies you to come to work for my company? And sell yourself. But the only way you're going to do that is if you look like you're ready to go to work, and that you have pride in your looks. Because if you show up with a ripped pair of Levi's and a t-shirt and kind of unkempt looking, then I'm going to assume that might be the type of work that you do. And I'm already prejudiced against having you go continue in the interview. Now, what's the advantages of having a military employee is, again, the discipline that they bring to the job. The disadvantages is that their experience level coming right out of the military is usually pretty limited to either one segment of the aircraft or one particular model of aircraft. And although you may be experienced doing that particular job, all of all of the, excuse me, all of the experience, I lost my train of thought there. I was interrupted a little bit. All of the experience level that you have on that particular model may be good, but oh, okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, all of the experience that you have on that particular model is beneficial, but you've got to know that you're going to be working for an operator who has other models and is going to want a broad base of experience. If you successfully get employed, be prepared that you're going to be in the learning mode, and you're going to be working with another technician who is going to guide you through all of the mechanical things that you need to do as a mechanic for that particular helicopter. So I'm sorry, there's interruptions keep coming through here, and I keep trying to. Oh my God.
Hey, sorry, I'm distracting Mike. So I was just asking the panelists if we could stay on a little bit longer to answer questions, maybe an extra 10 minutes. But please continue on, just touching base a little bit about what an MEL is, and maybe understanding a little bit about doing maintenance work in the EMS industry and how that may compare and be a little bit different from what our military folks are experiencing today. Whereas, like, being in the field by themselves with their own tools versus being on a hangar with the military. If you kind of touch base about that, I think that would be really beneficial.
So we'll talk about working with an MEL list that's a minimum equipment list, and it's part of what you will have to determine as to whether the helicopter is acceptable to fly based upon that list. And it's done in the medical emergency world, where they will determine if a certain instrument or a certain component can be flown that is not critical to the safety of flight. You'll sign off on that. The pilot will be the one that'll make the actual determination as to whether it is safe for flight, and he may make the final choice to fly with that MEL equipment list. So be prepared for that. And working in that particular part of the industry, you will be working with minimal amount of crew. Sometimes I doubt that they will put you out there by yourself when you first get hired on, but most of the time you're with one or two people working together with you at one location and working on one particular helicopter. And again, at that time, you'll be doing your maintenance in the evening time, because again, the flights are going to take place during the day. So you'll do your maintenance about that time, which sometimes causes for a long day. Let's see what else here. We've got when you do apply for the job, check again what type of tooling you're going to need. If you're going to be working with helicopters that are French made, they are of metric type tooling, you're going to need to buy some metric tooling. If you are working with a combination of helicopters where they work with the Bell and the French or the Italian, then you're going to have a combination of tools there. Most of the guys on the floor will kind of guide you along as to what you're going to need for basic hand tools, but you are going to need your own set of tools. And working out of another guy's toolbox is not going to get it. You're going to have your own set of tools in order to do that. The discipline, again, that you bring to the job will also be of benefit to you, and it'll be a benefit to you for moving along within that particular company. If you have been in charge of a crew and you've spent 20 years doing that, that will show through, and that again would make you, as you gain in your experience as a mechanic, it will also make you more viable and more more prepared to take over a crew of people and to move up and through management. I was, listening to both Cliff and John, James, or John and James about getting your license. One of the things, if you don't have your license ahead of time, which I would recommend that you prepare yourself and try and get it as soon as possible. A lot of the companies will help prepare you for it, and they will give you the opportunity to study the courses that you need. But if the best way that you can make yourself a good employee or a good candidate for an employee is to go out there prepared. Again, learn about the company, learn about what they do and how they do it, and also show up with your A&P ticket, or at least qualifying for having your 8610 ready, already involved in it and going after your ticket to show that you're interested. That's the helicopter launch legally. Okay, that's pretty much what I've got, Heidi. I don't have much more than that. I'll take some questions from anybody that wants to know about being hired, but sorry about it. I got distracted there a couple of times. So
Not a problem. We appreciate everything you have to offer, Mike. You have hired prior military people. You've seen the benefit, you've seen the strengths that they bring, you've seen where their weaknesses are, and the information that you provide on how they can prepare now, understanding that they bring excellent discipline, but also knowing that when they get that airframe and power plant license, they do come to work for a manufacturer like you or a repair station that you ran, to understand that it is a learning environment and how to prepare for that. So thank you very much. And I'd like to bring James Simmons on just for a short few more minutes to touch base on how to really prepare your resume effectively, how to prepare for some interview questions, what to anticipate, and how to successfully get an interview, and understanding what your resume does for you. So if James, you could touch base on that. And then after that, I'd like to open it up for question and answers. And we'll bring all the panelists up. So James, go ahead.
All right, no problem, Heidi. So the resume in a quick shot, right? Your resume is nothing more than it's your elevator pitch, right? It is a quick 2 to 3 minutes, which, for most managers, it's really maybe a minute and a half if you're lucky, but it's your 3 minutes of this is me, this is what I can do, these are my skills, this is what I'm knowledgeable in, this is what I'm trained in, and this is how I fit into your job description, which is one of the most important aspects. Hiring managers know within a matter of seconds as to whether or not it is a blanket resume that they have received, or that you have put in the actual time, effort, and energy to answer the job posting that has been presented out there. Because they are telling you, this is what I am looking for. These are the skills, the knowledge, the attributes, everything that I want for the ideal candidate to fill this position. And, you have to take the opportunity to say, here's how I can fill that position for you. The resume does not get you the job. The resume gets you the interview. And that is the first step. Right? A hiring manager is going to look through the resumes. They're going to look at the names, the information, and basically make a determination as to whether or not they, hold on one second, whether they say qualified or disqualified, or whatever category that organization may put their candidates into. And then from there is to line up the interviews to say, all right, we want to pull these people in and we want to talk to them. So now going into the interview process, and as Mike was saying, right, if you're interviewing for a professional maintenance technician position, you know, you want to look and appear professional. It's, you know, first impressions will last a lifetime. That is all that you have is that one spot to be able to display to an employer how you look and how you're going to represent their organization. So it's no different. The way you wore your dress uniform and the way you represented yourself for the military, right? If an operator, an owner, or anybody else, I want my mechanics to represent my organization, my maintenance, the same exact way. I want it that I'm represented as a safe operation, an efficient operation, and that, you know, I have the best technicians that work on my aircraft. So during the interview, the questions that will come about, they're going to guarantee you as a civil operator, they're going to want to know questions of what you know and knowledge of the FAR. That is not those aren't pass or fail questions. There is, you know, they don't expect anybody coming into with minimal experience to be just the federal aviation regulation guru of the world. You know, what they're trying to do is figure out kind of where you're sitting. Do you have enough knowledge under your belt to understand what's going on around you? Or are we going to have to put in a little bit more time and effort and energy? If you're in the interview, it's because you're qualified to be there. They're just trying to make the decision of which qualified candidate they want to go with. And so, you know, it's going to look at, you're going to be trained, right? I know Mike brought that up, which is a great aspect of understanding that all the mechanics, if you're for under a certificate of operations, whether it be a 145 repair station or a 135, you're going to enter into a training program and they're going to have to train you. They've already laid that all out to the FAA and said, this is how we're going to train our mechanics and this is what we'll consist of. And this is, you know, everything that we will do before we turn them loose on an aircraft. And so, you know, the expectations of when you're sitting there, the federal regulations, they may want to know more about your personal experience and knowledge. And that's almost, it could be anything as to, you know, what is one of the best things that you've ever done as a maintenance technician, or to when, you know, when did you feel the most proud as a maintenance technician, or, you know, what is something, you know, that you've seen as a you know, incident or a mishap caused by maintenance, and what your takeaway from it was. And right, and that's understanding that there is, you know, there's results and actions of what we do and understanding everything that goes with that. The trying to, what other, you know, make sure that you're prepared, you're organized, as Mike said, that knowing the organization that you're applying for and what they do for their revenue is quite important to that organization. And that's how they feel about that. So if taking the time to understand a little bit about their organization, that's an impression that how vested are you in obtaining the employment with that organization. And if that is only 30 seconds of your time by basically scrolling through their website, okay, then, you know, maybe, you know, it's not a right fit. If, you know, I'm not telling you that you have to memorize their org charts and know who the CEO is and know all the inner details of that, but have a good solid understanding of what they do, how they earn their revenue, and what their values. Usually that is an important one. Kind of know, you know, do the values fit your values of an organization? That is another super huge important one. You want to work for an organization that has the same mentality towards maintenance that you do, or their operations, you know, and their facilities can be a sign of that. Their, you know, their aircraft and appearance of their aircraft is a sign of that. And, you know, and that all comes into play. You know, and most of all, as a hiring manager, especially when it comes to the maintenance teams or within 145 or heavy maintenance or anything like that, you know, the one of the biggest ones, are you going to be a solid addition to my team? You know, you have to have, you know, the personality and the ability to work cohesively with others, to communicate effectively, to participate and work. Initiative is a big one because that is maintenance 101. Mechanic yep, you can sit around all day long and wait for somebody to tell you what to do, or, you know, a little bit of initiative within the boundaries of your experience that you have. I'm not telling you go tear down an aircraft on your first day. That's wouldn't be wise. So, and that all comes up in practice. It may seem really minuscule, but there's a lot of people that they come in to interviews and they're nervous. They're worried about tripping all over themselves. They're worried about what it's going to be like, or how they're going to do it. It's really a sit down, nice time. The only thing, the interviews will be conducted probably in two different ways, or actually I could think of three different ways. It could be one-on-one with the hiring manager. It could be or a group and board. So that's the best I could give you for the interview side. So Heidi, if you want to come on back.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate it, because I think a lot of people, like, they get the semantics. They know that they need an A&P license. They need to pass the written and oral and practical, and they need to get a job. But how do you get that job once you've got the certifications, you've got the qualifications, you've got the experience, and now I'm in the interview? Now what? And how do I properly prepare for that? So thank you for that really great input. And especially, like Mike said, and you reiterated, the dress for success. These are professional positions, and hiring managers are going to expect to see professionals acting and looking like professionals when they apply. So I'd like to take this chance to bring everybody back up, all of our panelists with video and speakers, and start addressing some of the questions that we received in the comments section. So John, if you want to just jump on board, I saw that you responded to Mr. Emmon, but if I'm a firm believer that there's one question, there are multiple people that have a similar question. So if you jump on board as far as being in the military for 20, 30 years and just now getting your MP, how does that translate moving into the civilian sector?
Again, my experience is I waited till the end of my 27-year career to get my AMP. I didn't need it necessarily in the Army working on aircraft. And I found no issue coming out and getting a job in the sector working on rotor wing aircraft, especially those at flight schools that are working the crap out of their helicopters. Those things fly a lot. Again, it's going to be subjective though. It's up to the individual. The jobs are out there. Are you willing to move to the job? There are plenty of just take Tennessee for instance, and we've got several air tours out here that go over the Smoky Mountains and provide air tours there. And I'm sure they need maintainers. We have right here in Nashville, several sightseeing rotor wing types. And then we have executive travel types that use helicopters that also need maintainers. So the jobs are out there. Are you willing to move to the jobs? This certification or the certificate, your AMP, just gives you qualification to work on civil aircraft. That's what that is. Your work ethics and how you present yourself and knowledge. I won't say knowledge, but your ability to act as an individual without having to be told, which a lot of military people have, that is going to go a long way as that. So I wouldn't be afraid of getting your AMP on your way out of the military. At worst, it's going to open more doors for you.
Great, thank you. And Cliff, I saw that you answered one of the questions in here. Do you want to jump on board and respond to that for Mr. As far as like the Guard members who are not full-time MOS employees?
Yes, the Guard and Reserve, typically they have to show more experience because they're not there every day working on the aircraft. But like I was pinned in that the only caveat to that is if you were like an Air Reserve technician or an active Guard member or something like that, then you're there every day. Now, the other thing, if you're on the reserve side of it or Guard, also your deployments, you were a year and a half in training, 2 years in training, getting all your certifications and all that stuff counts. So it's what you bring to the plate. It's what you represent, or present to, the PMI who's signing your 8610 off. It's how you represent that. And again, what John said, it's all about attitude. and what you bring to the pie. You know, when you're talking about jobs and all that kind of stuff and resumes, employers are looking for attitude. They're looking for that, you know, get it done type of attitude that military folks provide, you know. But we have to remember that we're not walking out the door as the top dog. We're walking in this new place. We've got to learn where our place is, which James says, where do we fit into whatever business, whatever we're walking into. But I think sometimes military people think, well, I should be paid this exuberant amount when your experience level is great for what you know, but you have to learn how the FAA operates and how these companies operate and what their expectations are. Once you learn that, let's say a year into it or whatever, guess what? Now you're their go-to guy. Now you can negotiate that salary. Now you can, you know, but you've got to be willing to put in that little bit of time to say, hey, I need to learn this company inside now. And once I do, I want to be their go-to guy. I want to be that. But again, in my mind, and I preach this a lot, it all falls back with attitude and communication. You got to be with, I don't want to pass somebody on the floor or this or that working on an airplane and I say something to them and they don't even respond. They don't even, you know, well, hey, are you doing all right? Or is everything okay? How's the inspection going? Or whatever. You know, how's your family? Whatever. You got to be willing to be open about that kind of stuff. That way your employer can feel, you know, that you know where you're coming from and where they're coming from and what you're meeting their expectations. I mean, I just love that part of it, you know. And the Guard and Reserves and active duty, they all just bring such a big piece. Military people bring such a big piece and can help this. What I don't know for sure the exact amount, but I think we're behind, almost like pilots are. 489,000 mechanics are needed within the next 10 years or something like that. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's like, we need you military people to come over and help lead and help get our companies where we want to go. And we know you want to expand your career and get things going. We want that for you, but you got to be willing to give that little bit to get a lot in the end. That's my personal opinion. So
I think you make an excellent point, and the culture at a company is enormous. And I think how you affect that company culture when you're hired can be a go, no-go decision, regardless of your qualifications, regardless of your experience, and how you impact your fellow workers when you're working on the floor. Like when I'm turning wrenches, I want to be able to talk to the guy that I'm working with. And if you are a loan shark, just like James had spoken on that topic before, make sure you find a company who needs solo mechanics. You don't have to be a chitty chatty Cathy, you know,
right,
to
amen.
fit in necessarily, but know which companies you're going to fit in with. And if you're working on a manufacturing floor where there's 10 of you working on the same aircraft, you need to be able to communicate fluidly. Thank you, Cliff. So James, I was wondering, James, if you could touch base. There was a question said, I received my 8610 about 10 years ago. Are these still valid? And I saw that you responded to that. Could you kind of answer that question for the rest of our listeners?
Yeah, so you know, John introduced that whole subject matter on his briefing, but you know, once you have your 8610 signed, endorsed by the FAA, and you're in hand, your 24-month limitation does not kick in until completion of your first written test. And so there is no expiration on them. You have them for the 10 years. It's only once the completion of that first written test, that 24-month is counting until you can complete your O&P with a DME. And make sure, check it with the FAA, make sure I'm right, John.
That's like I said, I held on to my 8610-2 for 15, 17. The paper was yellow when I took it to the DME. I mean,
I've tested people here frequently that have had theirs for 10, 12 years, and you're like, what took you so long? Well, I just waited, you know, that kind of thing. And it's
I told my DME is like, caution, be gentle with it. It's brittle.
Yeah, so exactly.
There's no expiration on that test until you take your written exams. Once you take your first exam, that 2-year or 24-month calendar or timer starts. That's when you really got to put your nose to the grindstone and get it knocked out.
And what, you know, some people don't understand this too, that 24 months, it's from every, so when you take your written test, you take your airframe written, let's say you go to a DME, guess what? That 24 months starts over when you test with a DME. So that starts over. Like if I did my airframe, it's 2 years from that point. I've got to get my power plant to that. So every time you take an O&P type test, it recalculates that time. But it's always a 2 year, but we don't do a very good, you know, explanation of, you know, how's that calculated. So, but anyway, it's just interesting that it's always changing.
It is. I had the unfortunate experience of not understanding the 24-month rule and taking my first written test when I wasn't prepared and didn't get I passed, but I didn't get the score I was wanting. So I was intimidated. And then I expired because I decided, oh, maybe I won't turn wrenches. And then I found out I was going to turn wrenches. So I had to go get recertified and get a brand new 8610 and bring brand new recertification and verification of experience to get that new 8610 to take my writtens again. So I was wondering, Mike, if you could just kind of touch base a little bit for us about, you know, John had mentioned when you come, you've got only say 45% of the experience that you need to get your 8610. And there are ways to come work for example, like a company you owned and operated, a repair station. What are some things some military mechanics could expect? Like how should they approach operators that turn wrenches as far as like wanting to get the experience they need to get that 8610? Like how would they approach a part 147 repair station in order to say, hey, I'd like to turn wrenches with you. I'm only going to be part-time, might be evenings, but how would you speak to people that want to get the experience necessary to get the full airframe and power plant 8610 sign off?
Excuse me, I would welcome, you know, and I did welcome the mechanics that came up with they were in the process of getting their 8610, and I would tell them again that, you know, we'll help you in any way that we can in order for you to get that. What I would hope, and you know, some people say, well, then you would perhaps you're going to want a promise from them that once you help them get their completed 8610 and finish the test, that you're going to want some employment time from them. No, I wouldn't do that. But I would hope that with the assistance that we gave them and allowing them to work with us, they would continue to stay on once they passed and got their A&P license. You always, I mean, anything you can do to increase the number of mechanics and help with them. It's kind of like you know, you pay it forward or pay it back or whichever way you want to call it. But you do what you can in order to do that. And I found that the couple of times that I did do that with some of the guys, they stuck around. They were happy that I would give them that opportunity. So it works both ways. But even, you know, I even took mechanics that didn't quite, they hadn't quite decided whether they wanted to get their license, that it was experience that they had in the military, and they knew that maybe, you know, if they came to this company, maybe we could they would find that they liked the job that they were doing, and we would make them a repairman and then move them along from that aspect there. So any way that we could help increase the number of mechanics out there and help them get qualified and get on, we were more than happy to do. We ended up with about 50 people when we finally sold the company.
Well, that's great. James, something you wanted to contribute?
Yeah, so one of the things, and I'm going to talk here, you know, a little bit about my experience and whatnot, but the industry as a whole, and especially on the maintenance side of it, there isn't an A&P mechanic that does not know the route to getting an A&P. And so they all understand, right? So even your local airport, even you find anybody that works on aircraft, whether it be a little maintenance hangar, a little FBO, a little whatever is around you, and go in there and introduce yourself to the mechanic or the lead mechanic or an IA or anybody, and you say, hey, this is me. I'm trying to get my A&P. do you need some help or assistance that I could possibly help you out and gain experience? So I know at Wright Pat on the Air Force Base, the Aero Club that's there, I volunteered down there for the lead mechanic to get my recip experience, right? That it was like, I got to learn how to do a compression check. I got to learn how to tie a magneto. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Why? Because every A&P knows everybody's going through the different ways and the different routes. They're not going to say, no, thank you. Don't like, is it volunteer? Can you get paid? Is there different compensation? That's all out there of how you want to approach it, right? I love Cliff's response with that was the time is perfect, because there's a little bit of an impression that if I take this prep course, if I do this, somehow osmosis, I am going to gain all this knowledge that I need to be able to take this test, and I'm not going to have to study. It's going to be cool. No, you're still going to have to study. You're still going to have to learn, and you're still going to have to produce in a testing environment.
Yep.
So it's not a give me at all, but I just wanted to add that in there because, there's little airports everywhere and there's A&Ps everywhere that are out there. And they have really, I've not met anybody that is just like, no, I'm not going to help you learn how to get your A&P. I've yet to meet that person. I might be out there, but
We're a pretty giving group when it comes to professionals. We always will help another mechanic, especially one that's coming
Amen.
out of the military. You bet.
No, you make an excellent point. Our military people, one, we already appreciate their service. And then, like you said, the maintenance community, if somebody asks you for help, we're the biggest ones. We're going to probably give you a little bit of crap just because that's our nature, but we're going to be more than happy to jump in and teach you how to do it effectively. And if you can learn with a great attitude, what you can learn is almost immeasurable. Well, I want to take this time. Go ahead.
It's attitude. And if you come to me with an attitude that you want to learn, you betcha I'm going to teach.
Absolutely. Was there anything else that anybody want to jump in before we start doing closing comments?
I will bring up something that was brought up by Darren in the question and answer thing. There is the Airman Knowledge Test results, or the exams, written test exams. Those reports are only good for 24 months. So if you go out and take your all three general airframe and power plant written exams, and then you go knock out your oral and practical for your airframe, thinking that's going to reset everything to 24 months to go, that exam is still 24 months for your general or for your power plant. So that time is still kicking. So it goes back to, once you take the exam, that 24-month count starts. And I believe the reports, the knowledge report exams now have the expiration dates on them, so you can actually see when they will expire.
Excellent point. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Well, thank you to all of our attendees for showing up. And I hope that if this information was useful and you could share it with somebody who's looking at getting out, this, like Dan said it earlier, this is recorded and you can share that with them. And secondly, I want to thank all of my panelists. Every single person who's here is volunteering their time, and they're only here because they want to make sure that our military folks are making a successful transition, and we are here to help. So we're going to provide a lot of job resources. A number of people have reached out to us saying they have job openings. We're going to provide those resources on the HAI website under the Mil2Civ link. Now, if you're interested in receiving access to this link, please feel free to share your email in the comments and we'll share that information with you. We don't share your contact information with anybody. This is primarily to make sure that you are succeeding in your military transition, and we are all here to help. So please feel free to reach out to us individually. You will have our LinkedIn contact information available on the final slide. And I want to hand it over to Dan Sweet.
Thank you, Heidi. And thank you to James, John, Mike, and Cliff. I do appreciate everybody helping out this afternoon. Let's jump into some of the good information that Heidi provided right up front. And we'll start with a jobs sheet. Heidi, I don't know if you want to address any of these in particular.
I'd be happy to. So if everybody can see, there's a number of links for U.S. government jobs, the Corpus Christi Army Depot, Bell Textron, Leeds Corporate, Apollo Medflight, Skybridge, and MD Helicopters. Every single one of these individuals reached out to me specifically to say, hey, we've got job openings. Please share these with anybody who's listening. And so please feel free to jump in and copy the links and to apply privately for any of these jobs that may be attractive to you. They're not very descriptive, but you know what? You can learn about the job in the interview. I don't think you should ever give up the opportunity to try to get an interview. One, it's practice, and two, it gives you firsthand experience of what the civilian industry is like. So even if you're not quite ready to make the jump yet, apply for the job, get the interview, and they may, if they like you, they may keep that job position available until you're able to process out. But these are some specific companies that said, hey, we know you're going to be helping military mechanics transition. Please ask them to apply to us. And so these are some resources. I would also like to take the chance to reiterate that our Mil2Civ is going to be at Heli Expo at HAI on Monday, March 6th, the day before the floor opens, and there will be recruiters present, taking your resume, doing interviews in place even the day before the career fair. So if you come and you're looking for a mechanic job, you're almost guaranteed a job. I can't guarantee 100%, but I would say it's probably a 95% plus chance that you're going to be at least asked to interview, if not offered a job on the spot with a company that's looking for qualified mechanics. It is a great place to come to get mentorship. Again, I want to reiterate that it is free to attend, and you can apply to attend online on the HAA website, and we can share that link as well. But anyway, I guess I'll hand it back over to Dan.
Yeah, just a quick hint. Rather than trying to write the links down, use your phone, take a picture. If you are on a Windows-based computer, do an alt print screen and it will capture an image, save it somewhere, and then do another alt print screen on some of the other pages we've got coming up. We just want to make sure everybody has a chance to get the information. I'm going to leave it up for just a couple more seconds while people are grabbing their phones or whatever it might be. But no, Heidi is right. Heli Expo, the Mil2Civ workshop that you've been doing for a number of years now, has really grown. The employers especially recognize that this is a fascinating opportunity. It's a great opportunity. This year's show is going to be in Atlanta in March. Information is available at heliexpo.com. So now let's share everybody's contact information. So if you have questions for any of the people that you talked with today or that were on the panel today, and you want to get back in touch with them, reach out through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is by far and away the most popular business social media program in our industry. If you are looking for work, this is a great place to post that you're looking for work. Networking is a huge element of our business. And so by going to the Mil2Civ workshops, by getting on LinkedIn, by talking with other mechanics, it's a great way to continue to build those relationships, and you'll be able to find a job usually right away. So once again, use your phone, do a print screen, do a screen capture if you're on your phone right now. Just make sure that you can get the information. If you don't happen to catch the information right now, we obviously will have the recordings posted and some of the information. We're going to try and get a PDF up onto our webpage, the Mil2Civ page especially, so that you can actually have everything that's got a hot link in the PDF. That will probably be sometime next week. We'll try to get the video posted to YouTube and our webpage tomorrow afternoon if we can. The final page is the HAI Mil2Civ website. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to access that site. We're trying to build this as a specific resource. We're going to be developing a new career and page for people looking for work, as well as people who are wanting to post jobs. We're trying to make sure that the page will be extensive. We want to make sure it's robust. We want to make sure that it has something for everybody who's interested in workforce development, looking for work. even learning what it may take to become an A&P mechanic or to become a pilot. And so please check back to this page fairly regularly. I think that does wrap up everything for right now. I'll come back to share screen here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to take this one last opportunity to thank James, to thank Heidi, to thank Michael, to thank John, and to thank Cliff for taking the time out of their schedules to give back to the military people, to help the people who are still looking to transition. Please accept our gratitude on behalf of HAI, the management team and the board. This was a spectacular webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Okay, I am going to get things wrapped up now. One more time to share screen here. Upcoming webinars. Today's webinar was a great one. It is the last one of the year. We don't have anything else during the holiday season. Again, on behalf of the HAI Board of Directors, on behalf of the HAI management team and the staff of HAI, please accept our best wishes for a very, very happy holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Any way that you celebrate, we wish you the very best for that. January 12th, we'll be coming back on our regular schedule for webinars. The first one is cultural acceptance of risk. We'll be looking at some interesting scenarios that we'll do a little bit more in depth on something like that and how the NTSB and the FAA work on investigations. And on January 26th, we have a webinar from an FAA presenter on sharing the air with drones. I think that'll be a timely topic as we get into advanced air mobility and expand vertical lift into our national airspace. Feedback, we definitely want to know what you think about our webinars. We'd like to hear from you. We have a follow-up questionnaire that'll be coming out to everybody probably tomorrow at this point. Tell us what worked, what didn't work, and if you have any suggestions for upcoming webinar topics, we always look forward to those. HAI is a membership-based organization. We would love to know what you think that HAI could do better. You know, if you have compliments about what we're already doing, we'd like to hear that as well. The best way for those is to go directly to Jim Viola, our president, send him an email at president@rotor.org. He does see every email that comes in, and he does sign those that are necessary to staff members for tasking. HAI is also a great resource for news and features on what's going on in the industry. Each business day, we produce Rotor Daily, has some of the top stories related to vertical lift and helicopter operations from around the world. We do all the work to look for these stories so that you don't have to, and we'll send them directly to your email inbox. They go out about noon Eastern, 9 o'clock Pacific. When I was working on the West Coast, I used to love to take a mid-morning break and scroll through the day's news. Rotor Magazine is a quarterly publication, an award-winning quarterly publication that has some really fascinating stories. They go a little bit more in depth than a lot of publications, and so it's a great resource. Both those publications, Rotor Daily and Rotor Magazine, are free, especially if you're in the US. If you live outside the US, we do have a small charge for shipping the magazine. You can subscribe to both or one by going to rotor.org/subscribe. That does conclude our webinar for today. We do appreciate that you took time out of your schedule to join us. We hope that you're willing to share this information with other people that you know who are leaving the military soon. Again, our industry is relationship-based, and so the more we help one person, the more we help everybody. And so we hope that you'll follow along with that program as well. Once again, happy holidays, happy new year, and we will see you after the first of the year. Until then, we hope that you stay safe and that you fly safe.